Welcome everyone to Marvel Hub. This is DK Dynamite, and there's a lot to talk about in regards to the Avengers project, which has been highly anticipated for over 2 years now and was finally revealed to the public earlier today during Square Enix's press conference for E3 2019. Now, the game will be releasing on May 15th, 2020, which is a bit of a ways away, but a beta was promised for all fans out there. And I think the biggest takeaways from the conference itself was the fact that in 2019 we are celebrating when games don't have loot boxes, microtransactions, and anti-consumer DLC systems. It's pretty sad to say, but yes, it was confirmed that the game will not have loot boxes, will have co-op and online gameplay, and everything post-launch will be free, which is a big relief for major gamers out there. And even though this isn't much of a gaming channel, this is all still Marvel related, which we're going to be delighted to cover and break down here on Marvel Hub. Now, it was also confirmed that the game will have a growing roster with more heroes for free. It essentially has the best cast, according to the dev team, since you have some fan favorites like Nolan North, who are voicing iconic characters in the Marvel Universe. So they're really happy with their voice actors for this game. It's going to have a new and original story that has not been translated on film or in comics before, and will have some crazy customization features going forward. But it was originally theorized and rumored pretty heavily on several subreddits that we wouldn't be playing as OG Avengers at all, but instead we'll be creating our own characters and embracing our own unique set of powers, as suggested by some leaked descriptions for the Avengers project a couple of weeks ago. And honestly, looking at this trailer alone, that proves that 100% wrong. We're definitely going to be playing as the core Avengers, before the 5-year gap and even after the 5-year gap. So that's already guaranteed, but it wouldn't be a bad thing if at some point throughout the story you get introduced to some new characters, or you can make your own characters that have unique sets of powers that could be mentored by the core OG Avengers. There's nothing wrong with that at all if it's an original story, but it's not going to take away from that core Avengers experience that we all know and want. It's just going to add on to it, and they're smarter than that. They're not going to just completely make you watch the Avengers on the sidelines and have you play as somebody completely different that you're not really invested in. They're going to allow you to play as your fan favorites, but they're also going to introduce things that may be taking a risk in some sense, but will still make this game a better experience. Now, in terms of Hawkeye not making an appearance in this trailer, without a doubt, he'll be involved at some point throughout the story, either as free DLC or as a mystery character that'll be revealed later on in the game's storyline. He was probably away doing something else on a different mission for the Avengers during this attack on A-Day, and similar to Avengers Endgame, they may have a very special side plot just for him that'll be revealed later on, but they didn't want to spoil in the first trailer for this game. So all the complaints aside about the graphics and the gameplay, we have not seen almost anything just yet. What we saw was really based around cinematic cutscenes and the storyline, not so much gameplay, but we did get some snippets of gameplay from various Avengers, which I'm really impressed with and really happy to see, because it really reminds me of a lot of classic Marvel games back from the PS2. Really gives me vibes of the Spider-Man PS4 universe that I'm really happy to be invested in. And we're literally almost a year away from the game's release, and so much can change in a year in terms of graphics, gameplay, transitioning, frames per second. So much can change in a matter of months that we have no idea how this game is going to look when the game actually launches. But as I tell people on my gaming channel, stop judging games months and even years before its core release. The same situation with Spider-Man PS4, where people saw some early gameplay of it and were not impressed, but then when the game came out, it was Game of the Year worthy with amazing graphics, fully utilizing the power of the PS4. So this game will definitely have the same situation and same outcome, where it'll release and it'll blow everybody away, and then when you compare it to the early E3 footage, it's almost nothing alike. It's going to be the exact same scenario with this game, mark my words. But even though this channel is really centered around the MCU and the entertainment side of Marvel, we have no problem and are really delighted to be covering the gaming side of Marvel here on this channel as well. So we'll be doing that with Ultimate Alliance 3 on Nintendo Switch, and definitely with Marvel's Avengers project, which may be leading us into a possible Marvel Games universe, which I'll also be talking about later on in this video. But in terms of more gameplay for the game itself, it was rumored that we'll be seeing some actual gameplay for this project during the E3 E3 Coliseum stream later today. So if that's the case, we'll be covering that footage here on the channel. Really excited to see what else they bring to the table with this year's E3 press conference. Not expecting too much, as obviously we're still a year away from the game's release, so they're probably still polishing a lot of the aspects and graphics of the game. So we'll probably see more in the next couple of months, and we'll probably get a beta for this at some point a couple of months before the core release. So if I had to assume, based on other games betas, we might see a beta for this at some point in March, maybe even sooner. We just have no idea what they're planning on releasing in terms of a beta. Are they going to be releasing separate missions at certain times or everything at once? We just don't know, but we'll keep you guys updated here on the channel. Now, in terms of the storyline for this game, as I was talking about earlier with Miss Marvel possibly making an appearance, there were some leaks out there that have arisen and are slowly lining up with the footage we saw earlier today. And one of those leaks is in regards to Miss Marvel. So it was originally rumored that Miss Marvel would be narrating parts of the game, leading you into her transition from just a innocent bystander being inspired by the Avengers to actually becoming one of the Avengers and gaining powers, and you learning how to play with her. So I think that leak is lining up pretty well. So with the narration throughout this trailer, we could just have a safe assumption that that is Miss Marvel. And at some point during that blast with that special looking crystal, that may have caused people to just gain powers throughout the city. So we could be seeing a possible Inhuman storyline. We could be seeing the introduction to Miss Marvel. So many different plot points could be drawn just from that explosion alone, which could do some really cool storytelling throughout that 5-year gap as we see in the trailer. So that's definitely possible and is a really safe assumption. So if we do see Miss Marvel, then that would really line up with a previous leak about how you'd be creating your own characters and would be embracing a unique set of powers. Maybe the people who leaked that just saw that part of the game, so they assumed that you would only be playing as these unique characters who are either fully customizable or are just unfamiliar characters from comics like Miss Marvel, who you would then play as for some of the story. But you can almost guarantee that it won't take away from the gameplay we're all hoping for with those OGs. It's simply adding onto it, making it better, making it more diverse, more unique, introducing us and getting us familiar with some really unfamiliar characters from the comics, so that now we have more knowledge of these characters through this original story. So besides that Miss Marvel leak, we obviously saw Captain America's death in the trailer as a result of that crystal exploding. So depending on what that crystal did, I'm pretty sure there's a big plot twist involved that will eventually bring Captain America back throughout the duration of this story in Marvel's Avengers project. I highly doubt they would spoil something so big about the story within the very first reveal trailer. There's definitely something going on behind the scenes with the storyline itself, either some time travel or some unique abilities Cap now has. We have no idea what they're going to do, but I'm sure if they didn't find the body during that explosion, Cap is still around somewhere, and we'll definitely see the return of him at some point throughout the game, because it was confirmed that you can fully customize every one of the Avengers we saw in the trailer and probably the rest of the roster as well. So why would they allow us to do that with Cap if he's going to die within the first couple of missions? Does not make sense whatsoever. So without a doubt, Cap will be returning at some point throughout this game, and I don't believe he's dead, but I think for the sake of that storyline or that timeline or just that plot, we may think he's dead, but he'll probably make a return in some way, shape, or form. You can mark my words on that. But in terms of that big creature we saw at the end of the trailer as well, looks a lot like Galactus, and I saw some purple in there, so I really wouldn't be surprised if Galactus was introduced at some point throughout this story, and I wouldn't be surprised if they made him the reason why that crystal exploded and made him the reason why the Avengers were set up towards the beginning of the game. I really wouldn't be surprised, but I think people need to remember that the gaming industry has different privileges and rights than the entertainment and film industry does when it comes to the utilization of these Marvel characters. Just because Disney didn't own Fox yet when this game was actually being written and scripted out doesn't mean that Fox characters at the time couldn't be used in this game or this different adaptation of a Marvel story. That's how the gaming industry works. They have different privileges and rights to use different characters, as opposed to the film industry, which can only use a select few characters when it comes to certain studios. That's just how Marvel works, because of the big situation back in the early 2000s where Marvel sold certain characters to certain studios, but they sold those characters for the film rights when it comes to making movies, not necessarily with games, books, and comics. That's a whole different can of worms, and clearly they may be exercising that ability to use Galactus if he is featured in the game. We also saw some gameplay in space, so maybe that's how they introduce Galactus at some point throughout this story. Obviously, we haven't had a Galactus and Avengers crossover just yet, since Disney just acquired Fox to be able to do that a couple of years from now. So people also need to remember that if it is an original story as they claim, that also means that they could be intertwining and combining a lot of familiar plot points and characters, putting that all in a blender and making something truly unique. I have full faith in Square Enix to really make that happen. We really have to give this game a chance before we can judge the unique plot that it may have. You can have Miss Marvel, you can have Inhumans, you could have Captain America's death, you can have Avengers Disassemble, and you could throw Galactus all on top of that and still make it work. And I think Square Enix is definitely going to pull it off when this game actually releases. But I think this game is really going to have a very unique roster that many people really aren't familiar with unless they've read certain comics, and is probably a roster that hasn't been anywhere close to translated on the big screen just yet. But speaking of rosters, I also wanted to go into those two cutscenes that they also released for us earlier today. The first one is a bit of an argument between Tony and Bruce over how the 5-year gap has affected them, how they lost, how they feel like they failed Steve, and how there's almost nothing they could have done to prevent those events. So getting a lot of vibes from the ending of Infinity War to the beginning of Avengers Endgame, where they know they lost, but they don't know anything about what they could possibly do next to prevent it. They have no idea where to go from there. And you also get some Civil War vibes in there as well, since the Avengers are essentially disassembled after that 5-year gap and don't know how to work together as a team, since they don't even understand the threat that they're facing. So big vibes from the MCU, but this is still an original story going into Avengers Disassembled, Captain America's death, and whatever threat they're going to be facing throughout this game. So a short cutscene, but definitely shows some crazy tension between some of the core Avengers, which we're all definitely used to from the MCU as well. But the second cutscene kind of went in depth with Hank Pym a little bit, so it's unclear as to whether or not Hank Pym will be a free DLC character or whether or not he will be featured in the main story right when the game releases. We have no idea, but Hank Pym will definitely be the Ant-Man throughout this game, so it'll be nice to see some cameos from maybe Scott Lang, maybe Janet, the Wasp of course, so it'll be cool to see some cameos like that. They'll probably be free DLC later down the line, but without a doubt, Hank Pym will be the Ant-Man at some point throughout this game's story, and it'll definitely be helping Tony in solving whatever the main problem is with their new threat. Possible Ultron side plot? The last thing I wanted to go over was the possibility of a Marvel Games universe already being in production. So that leads me into an upcoming video that I'll be posting later today in regards to how there are so many easy Easter eggs and connections that can be made about how Spider-Man PS4 takes place in this Avengers universe. And with that being said, that Marvel Games universe may have already been jump-started with Spider-Man's PS4 release earlier last year. So if that's the case, then we're definitely in for some fun with a series of various Marvel games that are all taking place in the same universe and could also be leading into a bigger event and a bigger game later down the line. But stay tuned in for some more Marvel's Avengers coverage here on the channel. This has been DK Dynamite. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and turn notifications on to stay up to date with the latest and greatest Marvel news and information. And peace out, everyone.